nothing to do.
Oh, no problem. I got it, guy. I got it. We're good. We're good here. Jesus. In my opinion, some of the most formative things that happen to human beings are in the form of very serious events that are very short in duration. A traumatic experience or witnessing something that is just so eye-opening that it changes or opens the door for your mind to be changed. As I've said before, I don't think people are that quick to changing. It takes it takes a lot of time, like creating a diamond and pressure and thought and activity to actually change somebody's mind. And that can extend into a conversation where you're told something that you really don't want to hear, and it might have been really bad at that moment, but when you look at it in the rear view or as it affected you months later, years later, you realize that the message, what was being told to you, was actually really good medicine. It was sour to taste at that moment, but really good medicine. Well, it's that thing, that event, that ultimately led to me becoming an atheist. What is this thing? It's like weighted down. It looks like it takes a propane bottle. It's got a motor. All those little red things are weights. And on the side it says 55 horsepower, and it looks like it's controlled from the front. It looks like a forklift, but like, what the hell? What the hell am I looking at, guys? What is that? When I was 13 or 14 years old, I went through what was called the Boy Scout Eagle Council meeting. And that's where all of the scoutmasters, high-level scoutmasters that are in your troop slash kind of like a one guest or somebody, they come and they talk to you and they do kind of a meeting to see if you're gonna be capable to get your Eagle Scout rank advancement. Understand, by the time that I went to this council, I had completed my Eagle project. I had all the merit badges necessary for Eagle. I had done basically everything. And this council was kind of like my last step before going to the actual meeting where you get ranked up. Wow, those guys waving as he changed lanes. That's awesome. And the whole thing brought down to a screeching halt, basically, this council meeting. And the reason was they asked me, you know, do you believe in a higher power? And I said, I don't know. Straight up. And they're like, well, you don't have to believe in God necessarily, you just have to believe in a higher power. And I said, I don't know. And they're like, well, what does that mean to you? And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. There's not enough information to commit to one particular thing and saying a higher power to mean all higher powers. And that's what I tried to do too. I was like, can I just say a higher power to mean all higher powers? And then like, we're good. I cover all my bases. And they were like, yeah, but they're looking at me like, who's this kid? Anyway, I hated it. I had a really hard time. And you know, I'm 13 years old and standing in a bunch of like male adults, and I'm having this like honest moment with myself and them where I could have just like bailed out and said like, oh yeah, sure, God, yay God. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't have been able to, let me take that back. I would have been able to live myself. I wouldn't have liked what I had done, okay? Because as you get older, you realize there's certain things that just don't matter that much. Anyway, that evening I went to go talk to my grandfather. We had dinner at my father's house a lot when I was growing up, because they lived right down the street. And my nanny, my grandma, she liked to be called Nanny, she cooked amazing food, just really good cook. So we're all gathered around the table, my grandfather's table, eating dinner, and I'm starting to recount the story to him and Nanny, and my mom's interjecting her thoughts on the process, because my mom at this point is kind of what you would call an agnostic, I guess, and this is all pre-Google, pre-Yahoo. So before, I would just type in what my problem is into these, you know, magical wonder boxes of the internet, and it would spit out an answer saying, oh, this is what agnostic is, this is what atheism is, etc., etc. This is like back when GeoCities was still like the major platform that people were building websites on, or even before that. It was crap. Anyway, so that information didn't exist. So I really didn't know what this concept was that I was battling with. And I kind of throw out that I don't know. I don't know. There could very well possibly be some greater power, but I don't know that we necessarily know what it is, or that we have books based on it, whatever. And I'm sure I wasn't as eloquent as I am speaking right now in my 13-year-old self. I'd like to believe I was, but I know I wasn't. Anyway, my grandfather in his, let me explain my grandfather. Grandfather was a World War II duck driver, a amphibious land vehicle. He was at Iwo Jima, he was at multiple of the Pacific battlefronts, he was also in the Korean War. This dude is a hard man. Marine, didn't fool around, badass, a real badass. And at the time, he was probably a little overserved on his favorite beer, which is Coors, always Coors. And he looked at me, and he was talking. He kind of did a little back and forth, but I'm like this. I was even more like this when I was a kid, and who knows what the hell I was talking about most of the time. And he looks at me and he says, because I throw out the term agnostic, of course he knows what agnostic is, and he's already got multiple comebacks in his head. Very smart, very quick wit. I'm assuming that if I get wit from anybody, it's him. Anyway, he looks at me and he goes, well, are you atheist or are you chicken shit agnostic? And that has stuck with me for my entire life. At the moment, devastating. Pissed my mom off. I was like, I was taken aback. I don't know what that, I didn't know what it meant, and he didn't really explain it. No one really explained it to me. I kind of had to figure it out over time, and relationship was damaged a bit at that point. Not for long. We sorted it all out, but still, like, I think at one point he called me on the phone and we talked for a bit, and he kind of explained it a little bit better. But at least that's what the story that I want to put in my head is. Not traumatic from a physical standpoint, but traumatic in the sense that it is so jarring from your everyday comfortability, and you have to actually look at yourself squarely in the mirror and understand what it is that somebody is telling you that you care about. I got it, and I understand what he was saying. And that moment, right, that moment has very little to do with religion, although the whole topic is religion, but it centers around a very core fundamental belief that I have. And so what did my grandfather's words do for me? How did they affect me? Well, immediately I was upset, and they bothered me. But there was parts there that I didn't really understand. I was using the term agnostic, not completely in a sense of understanding what it was. Again, I was like a 14-year-old kid, so taking a lot of liberties with what I thought definitions meant. And this led me on not a journey to find out immediately, but it was something that always stuck with me, and I began to figure out over many, many years what the two terms really mean and how they affected me. In terms of agnosticism, that means without knowing. Being a Gnostic means you know something, right? So a agnostic with regarding to a higher power or deity means you don't know if they exist or not. An atheist calling out an agnostic as being a chicken shit atheist. Well, atheist means you have no dogma. You have no theories of any deities. You believe, well, not belief, right? That's the tricky part. It's an absence of theology. You have no belief in any deity. Not necessarily because of an active choice, you constantly wake up and go, I'm going to continue not to believe in a deity, but because there's no evidence to support that. So, can you be agnostic and atheist? The answer is yes, and that's what I am. But that's not the point of this video. His words, they hit me, and they made me adjust what I look like to other people when I use words to define who I am as a person, because that's ultimately what people ask you. They ask you what groups you belong to. What is the first things everybody says in America? Oh, what do you do for a living? Well, that's so they can group you and make an opinion about what you do, what you like, what you're into, etc. Are you religious? Where are you? Are you Catholic, you Christian, you Buddhist, whatever. That's so they can group you, so they get an idea of what you're about. Are you Republican? Are you Democrat?
Are you like me and a libertarian? So all these, that one super hyperbolic comment from my grandfather made me very, very conscious of these titles and what they mean and how they affect you and how you should use them to try and articulate a better idea of who you are as a person for people who won't go deeper than the skin level, the very surface level.
So what did I learn from my grandpa? Well, one, if you're gonna pick a title, you better believe it and you better really mean it, because people will draw conclusions about you from that title. And second, if you pick a title to identify yourself that doesn't fully identify you or softens your point of view, you're also gonna get that picked out and people will know something about you. Don't try and mask who you are because of the thing you picked to title yourself, or if the thing that you are isn't fully represented by said title or group, don't take it. One regular Coors. I don't think I've ever had a regular Coors before. I always drink it out of a Dixie cup too. Either clear or sometimes red. I don't have any clear ones. I haven't seen clear ones in a long time. Well, here's you, Pop-Up. You were a hard ass, but I always knew you had my best intentions in mind. That's Pop-Up. Cheers, everybody.